Yes. In a world where trust can be a weapon and charm disguises manipulation, the unseen battle for your mind rages on. Toxic tactics, recognizing Machiavellian influence around you, is not just another communication guide. It's a powerful tool that unveils the shadows of psychological tactics used to control and manipulate. Have you ever felt ensnared in someone else's game, unsure of the rules or the players? This book dives deep into the murky waters of Machiavellian influence, illuminating the strategies of the master manipulators who lurk in your everyday life. Prepare to confront the darkness that seeks to undermine your emotional strength, empowering you to reclaim your autonomy and thrive beyond manipulation. Toxic Tactics, Recognizing Machiavellian Influence Around You, written and published by Stealth Psychology. Chapter 1: The Hidden Game. Understanding Machiavellianism. Have you ever found yourself spiraling into a relationship that started with warmth and affection, but rapidly transformed into something unsettling? Picture this. You are drawn to a charismatic individual who seems to genuinely care about your well-being. Gradually, you notice that your opinions are dismissed, your friends are subtly pushed away, and your sense of self-worth begins to dwindle. This is the reality of psychological manipulation in action, where the manipulator's ultimate goal is not just emotional control, but a complete takeover of your autonomy. Many victims remain blissfully unaware until they are trapped in a web spun with threads of deceit, manipulation, and dependency. Machiavellianism, named after the infamous strategist Niccolò Machiavelli, serves as a blueprint for individuals who seek to gain power over others through cunning and often unscrupulous means. The manipulator operates under a veil of charm, wielding language like a sword, expertly crafting interactions that are designed to disarm potential victims. They start with seemingly harmless flattery, planting seeds of doubt about your capabilities and distorting your perceptions of reality. As the game unfolds, the true nature of their intentions becomes painfully evident, but by that time, many victims have already surrendered their power. The tactics employed by these psychological puppeteers are insidious. They utilize techniques such as mirroring, where the manipulator imitates your behavior and preferences to create a false sense of familiarity, making you feel special and understood. As trust builds, the manipulator begins to introduce subtle changes in behavior, escalating to more overt forms of emotional exploitation. What began as admiration morphs into micromanaging your decisions, isolating you from support systems, and ultimately cultivating a dependency on their approval. It's a calculated move designed to place you in a state of perpetual uncertainty, wherein you begin to question your own judgment and worth. Victims often fall victim to this cycle because the manipulator's facade is compelling. The blend of charm and manipulation creates an environment that is both intoxicating and disturbing. Many find themselves believing the lies they have been fed, trapped in a mental quagmire where they question their understanding of reality. This is the critical juncture, the point at which manipulation shifts from subtle influence to overt control, often leaving victims feeling as if they are losing not just their identity, but their very essence. Moreover, the absence of physical scars does not nullify the impact of psychological manipulation. The wounds inflicted may be invisible, yet they cut deep. Individuals often emerge from such experiences with shattered self-esteem and lingering uncertainty about their own perceptions. The manipulator remains unaccountable, hidden in the shadows, while the victim wrestles with the aftermath. For many, the realization comes too late, when they find themselves entrenched in a world where their choices are stripped away, and their inner dialogue is dominated by self-doubt. Understanding Machiavellianism and what lies beneath these manipulative encounters is the first step in reclaiming your power. The journey requires keen awareness and a willingness to explore the darker facets of human interaction without the protective veil of denial. By exposing the hidden games at play, you arm yourself with the knowledge that can illuminate the bumpy path toward emotional independence and resilience. It is time to become aware of the traps set by those who hold their motives cloaked in charm, reinforcing the need to recognize red flags and reclaim your narrative. The emotional toll of psychological manipulation is profound. Victims often experience a roller coaster of emotions. swinging from elation to despair, driven by the manipulator's unpredictable behavior. This emotional turbulence becomes a breeding ground for anxiety and depression as individuals struggle to make sense of their interactions. Research has shown that emotional instability can significantly impair decision-making, causing victims to rely more heavily on their feelings at the moment rather than rational thought. In a pivotal study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, participants exposed to manipulative environments exhibited heightened levels of stress and lower cognitive functions, disrupting their ability to make sound decisions. This reflects a fundamental challenge. When individuals are mired in emotional chaos, their judgment can become clouded, making them more susceptible to the manipulator's influence. In terms of relationships, the impact of Machiavellian tactics can be devastating. Healthy relationships thrive on mutual respect, open communication, and trust. However, in a manipulative dynamic, these elements are systematically dismantled. Victims often find themselves isolated from friends and family, as the manipulator works to create rifts that facilitate control. For instance, consider the case of Sarah, who entered a seemingly supportive relationship. Over time, her partner's subtle criticism led her to distance herself from her closest friends, who had once provided her with vital emotional support. Gradually, her partner's insidious remarks distorted her self-image, fostering an environment where her only source of validation came from him. By the time she recognized her situation, she had lost her support network and much of her self-esteem. This story exemplifies how manipulation can fracture relationships and alienate individuals from their sources of strength. Furthermore, the relentless psychological pressure imposed by the manipulator can severely undermine an individual's self-esteem. Individuals subjected to this type of exploitation often internalize the negative perceptions that have been repeatedly reinforced by their manipulators, leading to a diminished sense of self-worth. A study published in Personality and Individual Differences indicates that individuals with histories of Machiavellian manipulation often battle issues of self-confidence and identity. Many begin to believe that they deserve the treatment they receive, effectively neutralizing their internal alarms and leaving them vulnerable to further manipulation. This cycle of low self-esteem can perpetuate a willingness to remain in toxic relationships longer than one should, creating an endless cycle of emotional pain. But why do people fall for these manipulative tactics in the first place? One key factor is the inherent human need for connection and validation. When someone appears to genuinely care, it can be challenging to discern their true intentions. Vulnerable individuals who may be dealing with personal hardships or loneliness can find themselves drawn into these toxic dynamics, believing they are being supported rather than controlled. Social psychology sheds light on this propensity. Factors such as the halo effect, where positive traits are attributed to individuals based on one favorable characteristic, can blind victims to the manipulator's darker qualities. As we delve deeper into the mechanics of manipulation, it becomes essential to arm ourselves with knowledge of the warning signs that often go unnoticed. In the next part of this chapter, we will uncover these hidden indicators, subtle cues that can alert you to the presence of Machiavellian tactics lurking within your relationships. Understanding these signals will provide the first line of defense, equipping you to navigate the complexities of human interaction with greater awareness and confidence. Identifying their targets is a crucial strategy for manipulators who often prey on individuals they perceive as emotionally vulnerable or desperate for affirmation. These individuals may exhibit certain vulnerabilities, such as low self-esteem, loneliness, or a history of trauma. Understanding this targeting process is essential for anyone hoping to defend themselves from psychological manipulation, as it reveals the calculated nature of these predatory tactics. A common scenario involves a new coworker who enters a workplace with a friendly demeanor and a keen interest in getting to know others. Over time, they may focus their charm on a colleague struggling with self-confidence, gradually luring them into a false sense of closeness. By initially presenting themselves as a confidant, the manipulator can create emotional dependence, setting the stage for future control. Another illustrative case involves high school dynamics, particularly among adolescents who are navigating the complexities of identity and belonging. A charismatic student may target a quieter, more introverted peer, offering friendship and support. However, as the relationship develops, subtle shifts begin to emerge. The manipulator's compliments may gradually transform into condescension, conveying the message that their friendship hinges on compliance and subservience. In such cases, the victim often struggles to recognize the dynamics at play. The initial kindness is so intoxicating that they overlook the erosion of their autonomy. This gradual manipulation can be particularly damaging among adolescents who are still developing their self-identity and understanding relationships. The psychological shifts that occur during manipulation can be both subtle and profound. As the manipulator establishes emotional ties, they also begin to alter the victim's perception of reality. This can include gaslighting, a tactic that involves denying or distorting facts to make the victim doubt their memory or understanding of events. For instance, consider a scenario where a partner constantly undermines the other's achievements, branding them as insignificant. Over time, the victim may internalize these dismissals, leading them to question their competence. This cognitive dissonance creates a rift between their self-perception and the manipulator's narrative, leaving the victim entangled in a crisis of identity. Additionally, manipulators often employ a strategy of reward and punishment to reinforce their control. The victim may experience moments of genuine affection and support, creating a pendulum effect that keeps them emotionally off balance. This intermittent reinforcement is powerfully addictive, causing the victim to cling to the positive moments while downplaying the negative behaviors. A clear example can be observed in a romantic relationship, where one partner is quick to offer affection after causing emotional pain. This cycle leads the victim to obsessively rationalize their partner's behavior, often falling prey to the illusion that the relationship can be salvaged if they just try harder or change themselves to meet the manipulator's expectations. Understanding these patterns of targeting and manipulation is key to self-defense against such tactics. Awareness allows individuals to identify when they are being groomed for emotional exploitation and recognize the early warning signs associated with Machiavellian influence. Knowledge is empowerment, and by dissecting the nuances of these interactions, you can begin to develop a keen sense of awareness that acts as a protective barrier. As we move forward, we will delve into the escalation of control, examining how victims become ensnared in cycles that reinforce their subjugation. This exploration will equip you with further insight, allowing you to navigate relationships with clarity and resilience. Breaking free from the clutches of dark psychological tactics requires both courage and a strategic approach, but it is a journey that can lead to profound empowerment. One of the most effective counter-strategies is to cultivate an unwavering trust in your instincts. This intrinsic guidance often serves as your first line of defense against manipulation. When uncertainty arises in interactions, whether it be a feeling of discomfort or a nagging suspicion about someone's motives, it is crucial to listen to that internal voice. Psychological manipulation thrives in confusion, and manipulators often exploit these moments of doubt to further entrap their victims. Regaining clarity amid this chaos is not just important, it is essential for liberation. Practically speaking, maintaining a reflective journal can be an invaluable tool as you navigate your relationships. Regularly documenting your thoughts, feelings, and observations about your interactions can help you develop a clearer understanding of patterns and dynamics. For instance, if you notice recurrent themes of guilt or confusion emerging after specific conversations, write those down. Over time, this practice allows you to disassociate from the emotional turbulence and discern objective truths about your relationships. You may find that what initially felt ambiguous or troubling becomes dramatically clearer when viewed through the lens of reflection. Engaging in this self-awareness can help illuminate the manipulator's tactics, equipping you with the insight to assert your boundaries and reclaim your voice. Additionally, building a support network of trusted friends or family members can serve as a critical buffer to reinforce your clarity. These individuals can provide a sounding board for your experiences and offer perspectives you might not have considered. Often, those outside the situation can quickly spot manipulation that you may have missed due to emotional entanglement. Sharing your thoughts in a safe environment fosters a collaborative perspective that can strengthen your resolve and embolden you to take decisive action against controlling influences. It can also be helpful to establish firm boundaries in any relationship where manipulation is suspected. This entails articulating your expectations and limitations clearly, ensuring that the individual knows what behaviors will no longer be tolerated. If needs are ignored or dismissed, it signals a clear departure from healthy dynamics and reinforces your resolve to break free. Remember, you have the right to protect your emotional and psychological well-being. Standing firm against manipulative tactics is not an act of aggression, but a declaration of self-respect. As we conclude this chapter, the knowledge you've gained about breaking free and reclaiming your autonomy serves as a powerful foundation. In the next chapter, we will delve into the master manipulators, their specific tactics, behaviors, and strategies they implement to ensnare others. Understanding the intricacies of these manipulative behaviors will further enhance your ability to remain vigilant and empowered in your interactions. Remember, once you understand these tactics, you will never be controlled in the same way again. To continue empowering yourself on this journey, be sure to engage with Stealth Psychology by subscribing, liking, or sharing your thoughts in the comments. This community thrives on shared experiences and insights, and your voice matters. As you turn the page to explore the world of master manipulators, remember that your awareness and determination put you firmly in the driver's seat of your life. Chapter 2. The Master Manipulators, Recognizing Their Tactics. Imagine walking into a room filled with laughter and light, only to find yourself inexplicably drawn to one individual whose charm seems to dominate the atmosphere. Lisa, a recent college graduate, found herself in such a scenario at a networking event. Amidst engaging conversations, one attendee began to shower her with compliments, complimenting her dress and intelligence. Initially flattered, Lisa soon became enmeshed in a web of fascination, only to discover later that this charming individual was not interested in her as a person, but rather aimed to use her connections and industry insights for their own gain. This glimmer of allure was merely a facade for a master manipulator skilled in the art of emotional control. The ultimate goal of such manipulators often revolves around the exploitation of their victims' vulnerability, be it for emotional control, social isolation, or financial gain. They strategically identify targets like Lisa, individuals who are either unaware of the subtleties of manipulation or allow flattery to overshadow harmful motivations. For many, it's the allure of acceptance and approval that entraps them within the manipulator's grasp, creating a scenario where they fail to recognize the full extent of their entrapment until it's too late. The very skills that make manipulators effective, charisma, persuasion, and charm, mask their underlying intentions, preventing victims from seeing the red flags that are often overlooked in the haze of admiration. Psychological manipulation plays out in various contexts, from personal relationships to professional environments. The tactics employed by these manipulators are as diverse as they are cunning. For instance, consider a workplace setting where a colleague continuously volunteers to take on projects with a facade of eagerness, only to subtly shift responsibility back onto you when the pressure mounts. Initially, this dynamic appears collaborative, with a shared goal of success. However, upon closer examination, it becomes evident that this colleague is adeptly using emotional manipulation to create a sense of obligation and compliance, leaving you bearing an unfair burden. Many victims in such scenarios are left feeling overwhelmed and questioning their competence, providing further control for the manipulator. These manipulators often utilize a combination of charm and intimidation, navigating conversations with ease, while simultaneously creating an atmosphere of uncertainty around their victims. The issue lies in the fact that victims may initially believe that these interactions are benign, only realizing the manipulation as it intensifies over time. The psychological effects can be severe, leading to damages that extend well beyond emotional setbacks. influencing decision-making processes and interpersonal relationships long after the manipulative interactions cease. Recognizing the breadth of these tactics is essential for anyone seeking to protect themselves from the insidious nature of manipulation. The more one learns about the psychological frameworks that support manipulation, the better equipped they become to discern when they are being ensnared by a master manipulator. While charm may initially seem attractive, it is crucial to look deeper, examining not only what people say, but also what they do. In this arena of emotional intelligence, the patterns of behavior employed by manipulators serve as urgent warnings, signaling potential threats to your well-being. As we continue to uncover the intricacies of these master manipulators, an awareness of their tactics becomes a vital tool in your arsenal against psychological exploitation. By illuminating these hidden truths, we equip you with the knowledge necessary to navigate the complexities of interpersonal relationships while safeguarding your emotional health. The emotional impact of psychological manipulation can be devastating, as victims often find themselves caught in a whirlwind of confusion and self-doubt. When someone is ensnared by a master manipulator, the effects reverberate through their emotions, decision-making processes, relationships, and self-esteem. Initially, victims may experience a euphoric sense of connection, but this soon devolves into a cycle of stress and anxiety. This emotional turbulence results in impaired judgment, leading individuals to make decisions based on fear or insecurity rather than rational thought. A study published in the Journal of Behavioral Decision-Making shows that individuals subjected to psychological manipulation exhibit decreased confidence in their judgments, leading to choices that reinforce their vulnerability and dependency on the manipulator's approval. For instance, consider John, who found himself in a toxic work environment where a colleague seemed to take a genuine interest in his career growth. John frequently received praise for his contributions, only to discover later that this colleague was subtly undermining his efforts to elevate themselves. This manipulation created a precarious balance that left John second-guessing his talents and abilities. Initially, John felt empowered by the recognition, but as time went on, he began to view himself through the lens of his colleagues' distorted feedback. This phenomenon is not isolated. Many individuals face similar emotional erosion as they argue internally about their worth and capabilities. The emotional manipulation experienced by victims often leads to a distorted sense of self-esteem, resulting in a belief that their value is contingent upon others' opinions. Interpersonal relationships suffer as well, particularly when manipulators instigate conflicts or plant seeds of doubt between friends and family. When manipulation funks the dynamics of these relationships, it can create a ripple effect, isolating individuals and compounding feelings of loneliness and despair. A relevant case study highlights Sarah, who was once a vibrant member of her friend group, until a new friend began to sow discord. This manipulative individual preyed on Sarah's insecurities, casually suggesting that her friends were talking behind her back. Over time, this led to Sarah distancing herself, succumbing to the emptiness bred from isolation. The result? A deepened dependence on the manipulator, who, in a cruel twist, would then offer Sarah support, further binding her to their whims. The reasons individuals fall prey to such manipulation often stem from deep-seated human needs for acceptance and validation. The allure of affection and camaraderie can cloud judgment, causing victims to overlook warning signs or red flags. The psychological principle, known as the bandwagon effect, suggests that people are often swayed by the perceived popularity or confidence of others, leading them to align with manipulative individuals out of fear of exclusion. Victims may find it hard to disentangle themselves from the emotional investments they make or perceive they might lose significant relationships if they challenge the manipulator. Understanding the emotional repercussions of manipulation highlights the urgency of learning these tactics. Recognizing the emotional shifts, decision-making declines, and relational upheavals can pave the way for recovery and resilience. As we transition into the next part of this chapter, we will take a closer look at the hidden warning signs of manipulation, equipping you with the knowledge needed to identify these red flags before they manifest into deeper entanglements. Awareness is your first line of defense, and by honing your ability to recognize these signs, you can maintain clarity in a world rife with psychological traps. Master manipulators are adept at identifying their targets, often honing in on individuals who exhibit specific vulnerabilities, traits that make them more susceptible to psychological exploitation. They look for signs of insecurity, loneliness, or a strong desire for acceptance. These traits signal that a potential victim can be easily swayed or controlled. For instance, in social settings, manipulators may gravitate toward individuals who appear eager to fit in or who lack robust support systems, employing charm and rapport to establish an initial connection. A compelling scenario encapsulates this targeting process through the experience of Emily, a recent college graduate. At orientation for her new job, Emily was immediately drawn to a charismatic coworker, Al, who appeared to take a particular interest in her. He showered her with compliments, praising her skills and potential, and soon after invited her to join a small group of colleagues for after-work gatherings. Flattered and excited, Emily felt as if she had finally found her place within this new environment. However, Al had ulterior motives. He quickly began to subtly manipulate her by offering unsolicited guidance that undermined Emily's confidence in her abilities, gradually leading her to rely on him for validation. As a result, Al seized control over her professional development while presenting himself as her greatest ally. The psychological shifts that occur in such dynamics can be insidious. Initially, the victim is likely to experience feelings of admiration and gratitude, which can evolve into confusion and self-doubt as the manipulator's true intentions surface. In Emily's case, she began second-guessing her thoughts and ideas, leaning heavily on Al for guidance. This pattern reflects a common psychological shift known as dependency, where victims gradually surrender their autonomy to the manipulator. Gaslighting often plays an essential role in this process, where manipulators distort reality to maintain control. For example, when Emily voiced her concerns about Al's feedback, he would shrug off her worries, claiming she was overreacting or being too sensitive. This constant invalidation caused her to doubt her perceptions, one of the primary objectives of manipulation. Recognizing these patterns and scenarios is crucial for developing a protective mindset. Take the example of Mark, who found himself in a troubling friendship with a supposed confidant. Initially, this friend built Mark's confidence through encouragement. However, as time progressed, the dynamic shifted dramatically. The friend began to subtly critique Mark's life choices, positioning himself as the only source of wisdom. Mark felt torn. He cherished the connection, but became increasingly isolated from those who genuinely cared about him. The manipulative tactics employed by this individual led Mark to a vulnerable state, creating a toxic atmosphere where trust was replaced by dependence and insecurity. The knowledge of how manipulators identify and exploit their targets serves as a critical defense against their tactics. Understanding the psychological nuances behind these interactions allows potential victims to engage with their instincts more effectively, enabling them to recognize when they are being courted by a master manipulator. Awareness is pivotal in breaking free from the grips of manipulation. Once you comprehend the forces at play, you can dismantle the mechanisms that entrap you. As we continue this journey, it becomes imperative to explore how this control escalates, how initial subtle manipulations can intensify, trapping victims in a cycle of dependency. Prepare to delve deeper into this theme as we examine the methods used by manipulators to maintain dominance over their targets, reinforcing the critical importance of recognizing these patterns early on. Knowledge is power, and your understanding of these dynamics is the first step toward resistance and ultimately reclaiming control over your life. Breaking free from the grips of dark psychological tactics is an empowering journey, one that requires purposeful strategies and unwavering trust in your instincts. To regain your autonomy and protect yourself from manipulation, it's essential to cultivate heightened self-awareness. A practical counter-strategy stems from the practice of mindfulness, encouraging you to center yourself in the present moment. By engaging in mindfulness techniques, such as meditation or deep breathing exercises, you can begin to clear the mental fog that often accompanies manipulation. This clarity is vital, as it allows you to discern your true feelings and beliefs from those imposed upon you by a manipulator. Consider keeping a personal journal to track your emotional responses and thoughts during interactions. This habit not only helps document your feelings, but also enables you to recognize patterns over time. When you start noticing certain phrases or behaviors that trigger discomfort, you can pinpoint moments where manipulation may be at play. Establishing this reflective practice cultivates a sense of self that is often overshadowed when one is under emotional strain. The more you trust your instincts and engage with your emotional landscape, the less susceptible you become to the uncertainties that manipulators thrive upon. Additionally, setting firm boundaries in relationships is crucial for breaking free from psychological manipulation. Clear and assertive communication of your limits allows you to reclaim your space and autonomy, providing a solid foundation for healthy interactions. When you articulate your needs and expectations, you send a message that you are no longer willing to accept behavior that diminishes your self-worth or undermines your decisions. This firm stance can evoke discomfort for the manipulator, who relies on a delicate balance of control and compliance. While this may lead to potential pushback or attempts to guilt-trip you into submission, standing resolutely in your boundaries reinforces your commitment to emotional and psychological health. Another empowering practice is to establish a support network of trusted individuals who can provide encouragement and validation when uncertainty arises. This network serves as a safety net, allowing you to share your experiences and seek guidance when necessary. Friends or family who understand your goals and values can help ground you during emotionally charged moments. They also offer perspective, helping you distinguish between healthy relationships and those tinged with manipulation. By relying on this support system, you strengthen your resolve against coercive tactics and remind yourself that you are not alone in your experiences. As we wrap up this chapter, remember that understanding these tactics is merely the beginning. The insights gained provide you with powerful tools to navigate the complex landscape of human interaction where manipulation can occur. Our next chapter will delve deeper into the escalation of control, exploring how manipulative individuals incrementally tighten their grips over their victims. This exploration will uncover the specific methods employed to reinforce dependency and maintain influence, preparing you with the knowledge needed to recognize and thwart such escalation. To continue empowering yourself on this journey, consider subscribing to Stealth Psychology for more valuable insights, liking this video, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your contributions enrich our community and help guide future content. Remember, once you understand these tactics and the cycles of manipulation, you will never be controlled in the same way again. Your journey toward liberation and self-empowerment is well underway, and the knowledge you acquire here acts as your shield against manipulation's dark shadows. Chapter 3: Psychological Traps. How they control you. Picture a vibrant social gathering where laughter fills the air and connections are being forged. In this seemingly innocuous environment, Sarah meets Alex, a charismatic individual whose charm is both captivating and disarming. Initially, Sarah is enchanted by Alex's attentiveness and insightful conversation, feeling a strong sense of rapport and understanding. However, as the evening unfolds, she begins to sense subtle manipulations hidden beneath the surface. Alex deftly steers the conversation toward personal insecurities, eliciting vulnerabilities that Sarah had only recently started to confront. In this moment, the ultimate goal behind Alex's behavior becomes evident: to exert emotional control and foster dependence by exploiting Sarah's weaknesses. Manipulators like Alex thrive on identifying and exploiting psychological traps in their victims. Emotional vulnerabilities that can be manipulated to achieve compliance, isolation, or financial exploitation. Often, victims are so entranced by the initial charm and attention that they fail to recognize the gravity of their entrapment until it's too late. Sarah, for example, finds herself divulging intimate details of her life within mere hours of meeting Alex, unknowingly providing him with the tools necessary to influence her thoughts and actions. Psychological traps manifest in various forms, with an important one being the bait-and-switch technique. The manipulator lures the victim in with positive reinforcement, compliments, affection, or validation, only to slowly lure them into a web of negativity and criticism. This creates a dynamic where the victim becomes reliant on the manipulator for emotional support while simultaneously nurturing feelings of inadequacy. In Sarah's case, as their interactions continue, Alex begins to question her decisions and judgments under the guise of concern. "Are you sure that's the best way to handle it?" he asks, planting seeds of doubt. This consistent undermining not only erodes her confidence, but sets the stage for long-term emotional control. Another commonly employed psychological trap is emotional blackmail, where the manipulator creates a scenario in which the victim feels compelled to comply out of fear or obligation. Using tactics such as guilt or fear of rejection, manipulators craft a narrative that forces the victim to choose between their autonomy and the manipulator's whims. Imagine Sarah being told, "If you truly cared about our relationship, you wouldn't mind doing this for me," compelling her to choose between maintaining her boundaries or risking the relationship she thought was genuine. These psychological tactics are insidious, allowing the manipulator to maintain their grip over the victim's emotions and decisions. Often, victims only realize the depth of their entrapment when they start to feel isolated from their friends, family, or even their own sense of self. The confusion amplifies, leading them to continually second-guess their feelings and perceptions, enabling the manipulator to entrench themselves further. In Sarah's case, by the time she notices the patterns of control and emotional coercion, her self-identity is already intertwined with Alex's opinions and needs. The urgency of recognizing these psychological traps cannot be overstated. To understand how they operate is to disarm the manipulator and reclaim your power. Awareness is empowering, opening the door to thoughtful reflection and proactive measures against emotional exploitation. In the subsequent sections, we will explore these traps further, equipping you with the knowledge to identify the mechanisms of control and develop the resilience necessary to safeguard your emotional well-being. Understanding these dynamics is pivotal in resisting manipulation and restoring autonomy. By illuminating the psychological traps at play, you can take the first step toward liberation from their suffocating grip. The impact of psychological traps on emotions, decision-making, relationships, and self-esteem is profound and often insidious. Victims caught in these manipulative webs frequently experience a tumultuous emotional journey marked by confusion, anxiety, and self-doubt. The initial feelings of closeness and validation that manipulators foster can quickly spiral into a cycle of negative emotions. For example, Sarah, who initially felt buoyed by Alex's attention, soon found herself wrestling with anxiety after internalizing his critical suggestions. This emotional upheaval begins to impair her decision-making, causing her to question her intentions and thoughts, often leading her to prioritize the manipulator's needs over her own. Research indicates that emotional manipulation triggers a form of cognitive dissonance in victims, where their beliefs and feelings become misaligned. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology illustrates that individuals subjected to manipulation often struggle with information processing and decision-making, as their emotional state affects their capacity to think rationally. When decision-making is clouded by emotional turmoil, individuals like Sarah may find themselves making choices that align with the manipulator's desires rather than their own, further entrenching them in the relationship. Moreover, the erosion of self-esteem resulting from psychological traps cannot be understated. As the manipulator systematically chips away at the victim's confidence, the victim begins to internalize the negative narratives being shared. Consider Jake, who became entangled in a relationship with a manipulative partner who constantly belittled his achievements. What started as seemingly constructive criticism soon morphed into a persistent stream of doubt. Jake began to view himself through a distorted lens, where he felt incapable of succeeding or deserving of happiness. This internalized perspective not only hinders personal growth, but transforms the victim's self-identity, creating a cycle of dependence on the approval and validation of the manipulator. So, why do individuals continue to fall for these psychological traps? The answer lies in the intricate interplay of human emotions and desires for belonging. Many victims approach relationships with an inherent wish for acceptance and approval. Manipulators exploit this desire by initially presenting themselves as supportive allies, making it difficult for victims to recognize the calculated nature of their actions. The psychological principle of sunk cost fallacy also plays a critical role, where victims feel compelled to endure toxic relationships because they have already invested time and emotion. For instance, when Sarah reflects on her growing dependency on Alex, she struggles to let go, fearing that all her efforts to build a connection will go to waste. This fear can keep victims tethered to unhealthy dynamics, perpetuating the cycle of manipulation. Recognizing the psychological ramifications of these traps is crucial for breaking free from their grip. The sense of urgency surrounding the need to understand these tactics cannot be overstated. Knowledge acts as a powerful shield, equipping individuals with the discernment necessary to identify manipulative patterns and self-destructive behaviors that may have crept into their lives. As we prepare to delve deeper into this topic, the next section will explore the hidden warning signs that many people overlook when trapped in manipulative situations. Understanding these signals will empower you to navigate your relationships with heightened awareness and protect your emotional well-being. Your journey toward resilience and self-awareness has just begun, and the insights you gain will serve as invaluable tools in recognizing and responding effectively to psychological manipulation. Master manipulators possess an uncanny ability to identify their targets, often honing in on individuals who exhibit particular vulnerabilities. They understand that emotional fragility, low self-esteem, and a strong desire for affection make certain people more susceptible to manipulation. By observing social dynamics, manipulators can pinpoint those who are eager for validation or support, enabling them to create tailored approaches that initially feel genuine and reassuring. This strategic selection of targets allows manipulators to exert influence more effectively, often without the victim realizing the extent of their manipulation until deep into the relationship. Consider the case of Lisa, a college student navigating her first year away from home. Eager to fit in and make friends, she meets Jamie, a charismatic and seemingly caring individual, who quickly offers her companionship. Jamie instinctively recognizes Lisa's need for connection and affection, and thus begins by showering her with compliments and attention. Initially, this dynamic feels uplifting for Lisa, who has been feeling isolated and anxious in a new environment. However, as their friendship progresses, Jamie starts subtly encouraging Lisa to question her judgment and decisions, manipulating her into feeling dependent on Jamie's approval for social acceptance. The warmth and kindness that initially drew Lisa in begin to morph into a carefully constructed facade that masks the underlying manipulative motives. As manipulation progresses, subtle psychological shifts become increasingly evident. Victims like Lisa may start to notice that they feel increasingly uncertain about their own choices and opinions. The dynamic begins to skew, where the victim is left feeling as if they can't trust themselves without the validation of their manipulator. Lisa, who once confidently participated in class discussions, now hesitates to express her thoughts, fearing Jamie's potential disapproval. This erosion of self-trust is one of the most damaging aspects of manipulation, often disorienting victims and placing them in a constant state of doubt. Another instance can be illustrated through the professional realm, where a supervisor may strategically identify employees who are eager to please or demonstrate a strong work ethic. Take the example of Tom, an ambitious employee who receives frequent praise from his boss, Mark. However, as time goes on, Mark begins to assign Tom increasingly demanding tasks without the requisite acknowledgement, leading him to believe that his worth is entirely tied to his output. While this dynamic appears beneficial at first, the reality is that Mark's tactics create an environment of dependency, leaving Tom unsure of how to advocate for himself or set boundaries, even as the demands escalate. Emotional fatigue sets in, reinforcing the psychological hold Mark has over Tom's professional self-worth. These manipulative tactics often hinge on the consistent reinforcement of dependency, a psychological process where the victim begins to rely on the manipulator for affirmation, guidance, and often their self-identity. Such patterns illustrate how psychological traps extend beyond the initial charm projected by manipulators, unraveling into deeper cycles of control and emotional exploitation. Understanding how manipulators identify their targets and the psychological shifts that occur during manipulation is instrumental for self-defense. This knowledge arms individuals with the insight needed to recognize harmful patterns in their relationships, allowing them to maintain awareness before deeper entanglements can occur. As we transition to the next part of this chapter, we will explore the escalation of control exercised by manipulators, detailing how seemingly innocent tactics morph into cycles of dependency and the entrapment of victims. By exposing the methods of control, we fortify our resilience against the encroachments of manipulation, empowering you to reclaim agency over your emotional and psychological well-being. Breaking free from the clutches of dark psychological tactics requires both awareness and decisive action. A powerful counter-strategy to regain control is the practice of cognitive reframing. This technique involves actively questioning and reshaping your perceptions of situations and relationships, allowing you to challenge the distorted narratives imposed by the manipulator. When you find yourself engulfed in uncertainty and self-doubt, cognitive reframing empowers you to view your experiences from a different perspective, fostering clarity and enabling you to identify manipulative behaviors more clearly. Start by recognizing your feelings as valid, but also distinguish between genuine emotions and those conjured by the manipulator's influence. For instance, if you feel anxious about sharing an opinion due to fear of disapproval, take a moment to re-examine that fear. Ask yourself whether it's rooted in truth or merely the product of someone else's expectations. Write down instances where you felt pressured to conform, and assess whether those situations reflected your true self or were reactions to manipulation. By employing reframing, you cultivate a sense of independence, enabling your true thoughts and feelings to surface unimpeded. Furthermore, it's essential to trust your instincts. Intuitive feelings often provide critical clues about emotional manipulations. When you experience discomfort in a relationship or find yourself second-guessing your worth, acknowledge that these sensations may be signals of psychological manipulation. Fight the inclination to dismiss these feelings. Instead, validate them as legitimate warnings. Understanding that manipulators thrive in environments of uncertainty gives you the motivation to seek clarity and control. Developing an instinctive awareness will empower you to navigate relationships with greater confidence and discernment. Another valuable tactic is establishing boundaries. Clearly defining your limits regarding what you will and won't accept from others helps safeguard your emotional space. For instance, if someone consistently undermines your self-worth, communicate your feelings directly and assertively. Saying something like, "I value our relationship, but I cannot tolerate constant criticism," not only sets a boundary but also reinforces your commitment to nurturing healthy interactions. Having defined boundaries creates an environment where manipulation finds it harder to take root. As we draw this chapter to a close, it's important to remember that understanding these tactics represents a foundational step in reclaiming your emotional and psychological autonomy. Knowledge equips you with the tools to recognize patterns, make informed decisions, and foster healthier relationships. The upcoming chapter will delve into the escalation of control techniques used by manipulators, illustrating how they tighten their grip over victims and lead them into deeper cycles of dependency. Arming yourself with this knowledge is essential for prevention and resistance. To continue your journey toward self-empowerment, consider subscribing to Stealth Psychology for more insights, liking this video, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Engage with our community, as your perspectives inform our content and help others facing similar situations. Remember, once you grasp these tactics and their mechanisms, you will never be controlled in the same way again. Your newfound awareness is a powerful tool for liberation, setting you on a path to reclaim your agency and lead a life free from manipulative influences. Chapter 4. The Power of Deception, Lies, Masks, and Illusions. Imagine sitting across from a seemingly genuine friend at a cafe where laughter mingles with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. As the conversation flows, you feel a sense of warmth and camaraderie. But beneath this veil of normalcy lies a hidden agenda. Laura, your close friend, appears to be sharing her aspirations and dreams, yet she subtly maneuvers the discussion to create a narrative that casts you in a negative light. The ultimate goal? Emotional control through deception. Laura's ability to weave intricate lies and present herself through various masks conceals her manipulative intentions, leading you to question your own judgments and self-worth. Manipulators like Laura excel at creating illusions that mask their true motives. They often employ charm and charisma to establish rapport, drawing people in with an air of authenticity. This facade can be highly convincing, tricking even the most discerning individuals into believing they are engaging with a trustworthy companion. Yet, as the relationship deepens, the manipulator reveals their true self, deploying lies that create a reality that suits their desires. Victims, engrossed in the emotional connection they've established, often fail to recognize the extent of their entrapment until it's far too late. Consider the story of Mark, a dedicated employee who found himself immersed in a web of deception spun by a colleague, David. Mark admired David's work ethic and strong leadership skills, viewing him as a mentor figure. However, David skillfully utilized deception by exaggerating his own achievements while downplaying Mark's contributions. This manipulation led Mark to feel diminished and insecure about his abilities, despite being a competent professional. Each time Mark received praise from their supervisor, David would undermine it by insisting that Mark was primarily riding on his coattails. The lies and illusions created by David twisted Mark's perception of his own worth, leaving him trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and dependence. The emotional impact of such deception is profound. It can create significant stress and anxiety, as victims struggle to reconcile the empty praise they receive with the negative feedback embedded in manipulative comments. This conflict warps their self-image, eroding their confidence and compelling them to seek more validation from the very person who undermines them. In psychological terms, these dynamics align with concepts such as gaslighting, where manipulative individuals distort the victim's reality, making them question their perceptions. The insidious nature of these tactics means that victims may doubt their sanity or understanding of situations. Subtle cues, like Laura's backhanded compliments or David's dismissive remarks, act as psychological tools deeply embedded in the manipulator's arsenal. However, the real danger is how effectively manipulation enshrines emotional dependency. As victims become trapped in these deceptive narratives, they seek the approval and affirmation of their manipulators, reinforcing the power imbalance without realizing it. By the time the truth begins to surface, many victims find themselves entangled in complex emotions, caught between longing for authentic connections and the toxicity of their relationships. Understanding the power of deception is vital for anyone striving to protect themselves from emotional manipulation. By illuminating these dynamics, we begin to recognize the masks individuals wear and the lies they tell, granting us the ability to distance ourselves from toxic influences. This chapter shapes the groundwork for knowing how to dismantle these illusions, paving the way for resilience and empowerment in our interactions. As we move forward, the subsequent sections will explore practical strategies for recognizing and dismantling these deceptions, enabling you to reclaim your narrative and establish healthier relationships. The emotional impact of deception can be staggering, as the layers of manipulation tear away the authenticity of relationships and warp individuals' perceptions of themselves and others. Victims often find themselves caught in a tumultuous emotional landscape, swinging between feelings of validation and crippling self-doubt. Those ensnared by manipulative individuals like Laura and David frequently experience a phenomenon known as cognitive dissonance, where their beliefs and feelings are in direct conflict. For example, Mark's admiration for David competes with the painful realization that he is being undermined, creating an emotional turmoil that leaves him feeling fragmented and confused. This emotional distress extends to decision-making processes. When individuals like Mark are subjected to constant manipulation, their ability to think critically and make sound decisions deteriorates. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology highlights how emotional manipulation can impair cognitive function, leading to poor decision-making as victims struggle to align their thoughts with their feelings. Mark, having internalized David's negative feedback and high expectations, begins to question whether any decision he makes is worthy of approval. This psychological manipulation leads to a reliance on external validation, compelling Mark to defer to David's opinions rather than trusting his intuition. Self-esteem suffers dramatically in these manipulative dynamics. Victims often find their sense of worth tied to the opinions of their manipulators, creating a volatile self-image that is susceptible to constant fluctuation. When Laura presented herself as a supportive friend while undermining your achievements, the psychological toll damages your perception of yourself. This kind of manipulation, where the victim feels heightened insecurity fueled by deceitful praise or veiled criticism, can lead to long-term effects on self-esteem. A study conducted in 2017 found that individuals in manipulative relationships report significantly lower self-esteem levels and a diminished sense of identity, reinforcing the cycle of dependency and emotional turmoil. People frequently fall prey to these deceptive tactics because of their innate desire for connection and affirmation. In a world rife with uncertainties, the prospect of belonging pushes many to overlook red flags. Laura's charm and perceived empathy initially serve as lures for deeper, trust-based connections. This tactic works intricately, as manipulators create illusions that blur the line between genuine care and self-serving interests. The urgency around cultivating relationships can drive individuals to rationalize manipulative behaviors as isolated incidents, hoping that with enough effort, they can restore authenticity. Moreover, the complexity of human emotions renders individuals vulnerable. The interplay of fear and loyalty can particularly cloud judgment. When Mark feels he owes his career growth to David, he struggles to reconcile those feelings with the realization that David's intentions may not be altruistic. It's this conflict that can keep victims entrenched in manipulation, preventing them from recognizing that their emotional well-being is at stake. Recognizing the emotional and psychological ramifications of deception is paramount in cultivating resilience against manipulation. As we draw closer to the next part of this chapter, we will illuminate the hidden warning signs that often go unnoticed in relationships steeped in deceit. By understanding these indicators, you can better prepare yourself to navigate the complexities of emotional manipulation, allowing greater insights into relationships that may threaten your sense of self. Recognizing these patterns is a critical step toward breaking free from the cycle of deception and regaining control over your emotional landscape. Manipulators are skilled at identifying their targets, often honing in on individuals exhibiting particular vulnerabilities, such as low self-esteem, loneliness, or a strong desire for approval. They observe social interactions and choose victims whom they perceive as emotionally or psychologically accessible. For instance, during a workplace meeting, a manipulative supervisor may fixate on an employee who displays eagerness to please but lacks confidence. By closely observing behaviors and attitudes, manipulators can create tailored approaches designed to foster dependence, often masking their true intentions behind a facade of concern or mentorship. A compelling example involves Michelle, a promising graphic designer who recently joined a new agency. She immediately gained the attention of Robert, her much more experienced colleague. Initially, Robert appeared to be a supportive mentor, praising Michelle's creativity and encouraging her to contribute ideas. However, he also began to critique her designs harshly, burying his comments in a veneer of constructive feedback. Over time, Michelle started doubting her abilities and second-guessing her contributions, believing she could only succeed with Robert's guidance. This manipulation quickly cultivated a sense of dependency within Michelle, leaving her vulnerable to Robert's subtle control over her professional identity. The psychological shifts that occur during manipulation are often gradual yet profound. Initially, victims may experience feelings of gratitude and admiration as manipulators shower them with attention and perceived validation. Yet, as the manipulative dynamics deepen, victims like Michelle find themselves entrapped in self-doubt and confusion. The initial praise becomes overshadowed by negative assessments, leading to a bleak distortion of their self-image. Michelle, who once bravely shared her creative ideas, now hesitates to contribute, fearing that any suggestion might invoke Robert's scorn. This erosion of confidence can trigger a debilitating cycle of dependency on the manipulator for emotional and intellectual validation. Manipulators also leverage emotional triggers to reinforce their control. By identifying specific insecurities or desires in their targets, they can exploit vulnerabilities and create an environment where victims feel emotionally obligated to please them. The artful blend of praise, criticism, and emotional withdrawal keeps victims disoriented and eager to regain the manipulator's favor. For example, Michelle might receive overwhelming praise after an impressive presentation, only to face cryptic remarks during tense discussions. This inconsistency in feedback fosters a gripping emotional turmoil, making it exceedingly difficult for victims to extricate themselves from the manipulative web. Understanding how manipulators identify their targets and the psychological shifts that occur during manipulation provides vital insights into self-defense. Victims often overlook red flags hidden within manipulation, believing that relationships should feel secure and affirming. The allure of charm and attention can cloud judgment, making it challenging to recognize the underlying motives. By dissecting these interactions, potential victims are better equipped to identify patterns in their experiences, discerning unhealthy dynamics that may be present in their relationships. As we prepare to delve further into this subject, it becomes imperative to explore the escalation of control techniques employed by manipulators. Understanding how these tactics evolve will provide you with clarity on how victims become entrenched in cycles of dependency. Knowledge of this process is crucial for those wishing to extricate themselves from manipulative situations, as it lays the groundwork for resisting future influence and reclaiming agency over one's emotional well-being. By illuminating these dynamics, we aim to empower individuals to establish healthier boundaries and foster more authentic connections in their lives. Breaking free from the grip of dark psychological tactics requires an intentional and strategic approach, especially when navigating the deceptive world of manipulation. A powerful counter-strategy to reclaim your autonomy is the practice of developing emotional awareness and assertiveness. This involves recognizing your feelings, assessing their origins, and confidently expressing your needs and boundaries in relationships. Start by conducting an internal inventory of your emotions whenever you interact with someone who may be manipulative. For instance, if you feel anxious or uncertain after conversations with a colleague or friend, take time to reflect on those feelings. Ask yourself why you felt that way. Was it due to their praise, criticism, or the way they redirected discussions? Documenting your feelings in a journal can provide clarity, helping you identify patterns that may not be evident during the initial emotional response. Recognizing these feelings for what they are, potential indicators of manipulation, empowers you to act from a place of awareness rather than confusion. Additionally, trusting your instincts is vital. Your intuition often acts as a reliable compass in navigating interpersonal dynamics. When something feels off or when praise feels insincere, don't dismiss those feelings. Instead, acknowledge them and allow them to guide your decision-making. Manipulators thrive in environments of uncertainty, so by regaining clarity and trusting your gut instincts, you fortify your emotional defenses. You can start by practicing assertiveness training, which emphasizes clear and direct communication about your thoughts and feelings. This helps establish your boundaries and makes it more difficult for manipulators to exploit you. Furthermore, remind yourself that you have the right to advocate for your emotional well-being. Practice stating your needs explicitly and don't be afraid to push back against manipulative rhetoric. If someone attempts to undermine your confidence or twist your words, assertively communicate that you won't tolerate that behavior. A simple, "I don't appreciate that comment," or "I prefer to make this decision based on my judgment," can reinforce your boundaries and make manipulators think twice about their tactics. As this chapter concludes, remember that understanding these manipulation tactics is the first step toward resistance. Empowerment comes from an informed perspective, allowing you to break free from manipulative dynamics. In our next chapter, we will explore the escalation of control, revealing how manipulators deepen their grip over their victims and entrap them in cycles of dependency. We'll learn how to recognize these patterns before they ensnare you, ensuring you remain in control of your relationships. For continued insights on navigating manipulation and fostering healthier relationships, consider subscribing to Stealth Psychology. Your engagement helps shape the content that supports others facing similar challenges. Be sure to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice is vital in building a community focused on growth and empowerment. Once you grasp these tactics, you will never be controlled in the same way again. Your journey toward emotional liberation begins with knowledge, equipping you with the tools needed to reclaim your narrative and resist manipulation in all its forms. Chapter 5. Breaking Free. Outsmarting Toxic Influences. Consider a scenario in which Emma, a talented artist, finds herself continuously sidetracked by her partner, Jake, who presents himself as supportive yet subtly undermines her confidence. Initially, their relationship feels nurturing. He praises her work but frequently suggests that she would be better off taking his advice or following his lead in her artistic pursuits. Over time, Emma finds herself hesitating to showcase her art to others, convinced that Jake's vision is far superior to her own. The ultimate goal behind Jake's behavior becomes increasingly clear: to establish emotional control and compliance, rendering Emma dependent on his validation. While she is captivated by the notion of partnership and support, she fails to see the insidious nature of his manipulation until it is woven deeply into the fabric of her life. Victims like Emma often fall prey to toxic influences gradually, lulled into a false sense of security. Manipulators utilize a series of tactics designed to exploit vulnerabilities and weaken the victim's self-esteem. They may start by initially presenting themselves as allies, affectionate and committed partners, or friends who genuinely care about the victim's well-being. However, their true intentions begin to surface as they skillfully navigate conversations, sowing seeds of doubt that cultivate dependence. In Emma's case, Jake uses the guise of advice to create an emotional landscape where she no longer trusts her judgment, leading her to second-guess her decisions and defer to his opinions. The emotional toll of this manipulation is profound. Victims often become ensnared in a cycle of self-doubt, questioning their abilities and worthiness. Emma's increasing reluctance to share her passion results in an internal struggle that pits her desire for independence against her need for Jake's approval. As emotional influences tighten their grip, the victim may begin to associate their self-worth with compliance to the manipulator's expectations. The gradual unraveling of their self-esteem leaves emotional scars, making it difficult for the victim to recognize when they are entrapped. Psychological research supports this observation, suggesting that individuals subjected to prolonged emotional manipulation are more likely to develop anxiety and depressive symptoms. A study from the American Psychological Association indicates that such manipulation not only affects self-esteem, but can also lead to difficulties in relationships and impaired decision-making. As victims become more reliant on their manipulators, they may fail to recognize their entrapment. They see themselves as incapable of existing independently without the guidance and support of the very individual who holds them back. As the distance between the victim's individuality and the manipulator's influence widens, emotional isolation ensues. Friends and family may notice the changes in the victim's personality or passions, and relationships with supportive figures may start to suffer as the victim becomes increasingly reliant on the toxic influence. Emma, for instance, may find herself recoiling from invitations to exhibit her work or discuss her art, withdrawing from a community that once inspired her creativity. Recognizing and breaking free from these toxic influences is of paramount importance. The hidden truths behind manipulation can easily ensnare even the most self-aware individuals, creating an emotional landscape clouded by confusion and uncertainty. As we continue this chapter, we will explore effective strategies for outsmarting these toxic influences, empowering readers to reclaim their narratives and rebuild their self-esteem. Understanding how to discern and dismantle emotional manipulation is not only vital for personal growth, but also critical for fostering healthier relationships, allowing one to thrive rather than merely survive in a world fraught with toxic dynamics. The emotional impact of toxic influences is profound and often debilitating. Victims like Emma frequently experience a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, leading them to feel increasingly vulnerable, anxious, and even ashamed. As Emma becomes more entwined in Jake's manipulative behavior, her feelings of self-worth begin to erode. Psychological research underscores this sentiment, indicating that individuals subjected to emotional manipulation suffer from elevated levels of stress and anxiety, along with diminished self-esteem, a trend observed in victims of emotional abuse. A study published in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence highlights that emotional manipulation is not merely a background disturbance in relationships. It actively reshapes victims' self-perception and emotional landscape, leaving long-lasting effects on their psychological health. This erosion of self-esteem can lead to poor decision-making. Emma, once confident in her abilities as an artist, gradually finds herself defaulting to Jake's opinions when considering her art. Emotional manipulation fosters a sense of cognitive dissonance, causing her to oscillate between her original beliefs and the distorted views presented by Jake. As research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology reveals, individuals who frequently second-guess their decisions often rely on external validation, leading them to make choices that align with their manipulator's agenda rather than their true desires. Emma may begin to abandon projects she was passionate about simply to appease Jake's authoritative stance on what constitutes good art, further entrenching herself in a toxic relationship dynamic. In terms of relationships, toxic influences create a ripple effect that extends beyond the immediate dynamic between the victim and the manipulator. Victims often find themselves isolated from friends and family, as their time and emotional energy shrink to accommodate the dominating presence of the manipulator. This isolation can become self-reinforcing, as manipulators frequently create narratives that position outsiders as threats or criticisms. In Emma's case, Jake might imply that her friends do not appreciate her artistic ambitions, or he may outright discourage her from spending time with people who celebrate her individuality. Over time, Emma, seeking to maintain peace and avoid conflict, may withdraw from social interactions, feeding into the manipulator's desire for control and compliance. Yet, there are reasons people often fall for these toxic dynamics. The allure of affection or approval can create a sense of dependence that blinds victims to the realities of their relationships. Manipulators are skilled at identifying weaknesses, noting which insecurities resonate most strongly with their victims, and using this knowledge to craft seductions that feel genuine. For instance, during moments of vulnerability, Jake may shower Emma with compliments, giving her the impression that he truly values her artistic capabilities, only to contrast this behavior with harsh critiques whenever her confidence surges. This bait-and-switch pattern causes confusion, as the victim tries to reconcile the positive feelings with the negative experiences, often believing that if they just work harder, they can regain the affections of their toxic partner. Understanding the emotional ramifications of toxic influences and the underlying psychological mechanisms at play is essential for those seeking to break free. Victims must learn to recognize the patterns and nuances of manipulation that erode their self-esteem and relationships, empowering them to reject these unhealthy constructs. This knowledge equips individuals to rebuild their self-worth and cultivate healthier relationships grounded in respect and authenticity. As we transition to the next section of this chapter, we will delve into the hidden warning signs that often go unnoticed in relationships marred by toxicity. By identifying these red flags early, you can protect yourself from becoming ensnared in a web of deceit and emotional harm, paving the way for healthier connections in your life. Recognizing these warning signs is crucial for reclaiming your narrative and is an important step in navigating the complexities of human relationships while ensuring your emotional well-being remains intact. Manipulators exhibit a keen ability to identify their targets, typically gravitating toward individuals who display signs of vulnerability, such as low self-esteem, a strong need for validation, or emotional instability. They hone in on these traits, conducting careful observations and utilizing initial interactions to assess their potential victims. Consider the scenario of James, a well-intentioned yet insecure professional who has recently joined a new firm. During casual office encounters, a colleague named Lisa quickly recognizes James's desire for belonging and affirmation. By mirroring his enthusiasm and feigning camaraderie, Lisa builds rapport, setting a foundation for emotional manipulation. The tactics employed by manipulators often unfold gradually, making it challenging for victims like James to discern their intentions until they are deeply submerged in the web of manipulation. Lisa, after establishing a friendly relationship, begins to subtly undermine James's confidence by contrasting his achievements with her own. For instance, she praises his efforts in front of others, but later critiques his choices privately, suggesting that he lacks the experience needed for success. This duality creates a psychological shift within James, where his initial belief in his own competence starts to waver. Victims often struggle to reconcile the positive feelings of friendship with the negative impacts of manipulation, leading them to second-guess their instincts. An important aspect to consider is how manipulators employ emotional cues to create a sense of attachment while simultaneously instilling insecurity. After moments of praise, Lisa might use subtle jabs, such as noting how other coworkers seem more competent or comparing James's work unfavorably to that of his peers. This pattern cultivates a sense of dependence on her approval, as James starts believing that he cannot thrive without Lisa's input or validation. Rather than focusing on his own capabilities, he becomes engrossed in fulfilling her expectations, making him increasingly vulnerable to emotional control. Moreover, manipulators often exploit situational contexts to reinforce their influence over the victim. For example, when conflicts arise in the workplace, Lisa skillfully positions herself as James's ally, creating an us versus them narrative. This tactic not only fuels compliance but also isolates James from other colleagues, generating a false sense of loyalty to Lisa while driving deeper wedges between him and his peers. The relationship distortion leaves James in a precarious position, oscillating between gratitude for Lisa's companionship and confusion stemming from her subtle critiques. Recognizing the psychological shifts accompanying manipulation is vital for anyone looking to protect themselves. Victims must be vigilant in monitoring their emotional responses, noticing when their feelings begin to skew toward doubt, anxiety, or confusion during interactions. A critical turning point involves the victim's realization that their experiences are dictated by another's influence rather than their intrinsic worth. As James becomes aware of this dynamic, he can begin to question the validity of Lisa's critiques and consider the possibility that he is being manipulated. Understanding the tactics manipulators use to identify and exploit their targets is a crucial step toward resistance. Knowledge equips potential victims with the tools needed to recognize patterns of behavior that signal manipulation. By increasing awareness of how these dynamics unfold, individuals can establish healthier boundaries and make informed decisions that prioritize their emotional well-being. With this understanding at hand, we will transition to the next part of this chapter, where we will explore the escalation of control, examining how manipulative individuals tighten their grasp on their victims and ensnare them in cycles of dependence. It is through this lens of awareness that healing and empowerment can truly begin, allowing individuals to reclaim their autonomy and break free from toxic influences. Breaking free from the clutches of dark psychological tactics requires both awareness and decisive action. A powerful counter-strategy to reclaim your autonomy is the development of strong personal boundaries combined with the practice of self-affirmation. Establishing clear boundaries enables you to delineate what behaviors you will and will not tolerate in your relationships, providing a solid foundation for emotional protection. When you evaluate interactions with manipulators, be vigilant in observing whether their behaviors undermine your self-esteem or invade your emotional space. Self-affirmation is equally essential in fortifying your mental resilience. Regularly affirming your worth and values helps counteract the negative messages perpetuated by manipulators. Create a list of your strengths, accomplishments, and the qualities that make you unique. This list serves not only as a reminder of your intrinsic value, but also as a resource to draw upon during challenging moments when you might feel swayed by the manipulator's influence. For instance, if Lisa attempts to belittle your efforts, reflect on your self-affirmations to resist her narrative. Engage in daily practices of either writing or speaking aloud these affirmations, reinforcing your self-esteem and personal identity in the process. Another significant aspect of breaking free is cultivating the ability to trust your instincts. Trusting your gut feelings allows you to navigate relationships with greater clarity and confidence. If ever you feel uneasy or pressured during an interaction, take a step back to assess the situation. Reflect on the source of your discomfort, whether it stems from manipulative behaviors or subtle cues that raise alarms. Remember, manipulators thrive in environments filled with uncertainty and self-doubt. By regaining clarity about your feelings, you can empower yourself to make informed choices about your relationships. To facilitate this process, consider keeping a reflective journal. Document your feelings and thoughts whenever you engage in interactions that feel ambiguous or manipulative. Noting down emotions as they arise can help you connect the dots between specific behaviors and your reactions. Over time, this practice enhances your awareness of patterns in your relationships, enabling you to recognize when boundaries have been crossed or when manipulation is at play. As we conclude this chapter, remember that understanding psychological manipulation is the first step toward liberation. Awareness empowers you to identify toxic influences in your life and respond with clarity and confidence. In our next chapter, we will explore the escalation of control, examining how manipulators tighten their grip and entrap their victims in cycles that are difficult to escape. By gaining insight into these escalating tactics, you will be even better equipped to maintain your autonomy and resist further manipulation. For continued support on your journey to emotional freedom, be sure to subscribe to Stealth Psychology for more insights and strategies on protecting yourself from psychological manipulation. If this content resonates with you, please like this video and share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Your engagement not only fosters our community, but also helps guide the development of future content. Once you recognize these tactics and understand how they operate, you will never be controlled in the same way again. Your empowerment starts now, and with each step you take, you reclaim your narrative and your strength. Chapter 6: Strengthening Your Mind, Building Mental Resilience. Imagine a seemingly ordinary day at work for Sarah, a diligent employee who prides herself on her contributions to her team. As the weeks progress, however, a colleague named Tara begins to exert an increasingly unsettling influence over her. Initially, Tara offers what seems to be constructive feedback, but as time goes by, it becomes apparent that her comments are laced with subtle denigration, undermining Sarah's confidence. The ultimate goal behind Tara's behavior is clear: to establish emotional control over Sarah, rendering her compliant and increasingly dependent on Tara's assessments for validation. As the manipulation escalates, Sarah fails to recognize the full extent of her entrapment, believing that Tara is simply trying to help her improve. This scenario highlights how psychological manipulation often begins with an insidious charm that can be deceptively enticing. Victims like Sarah frequently find themselves disoriented, navigating a minefield of criticism masked as suggestions. Tara's calculated approach capitalizes on Sarah's self-doubt and ambition, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty where Sarah feels compelled to rely on Tara's opinions. Meanwhile, the negative affirmations ingrained in their interactions slowly chip away at Sarah's self-worth, making it increasingly challenging for her to discern Tara's tactics and establish a sense of mental resilience. The emotional toll of such manipulation can be profound. Victims often experience heightened anxiety and stress, causing them to spiral further away from their true potential. Research shows that chronic exposure to psychological manipulation can result in a decrease in mental resilience, as individuals become conditioned to accept negative feedback as truth. Sarah, who once approached her projects with confidence, now finds herself overwhelmed and insecure, doubting her abilities and feeling paralyzed by the fear of failing to meet Tara's expectations. Building mental resilience requires an intentional effort to cultivate a robust internal dialogue that challenges negative beliefs fostered by manipulators. For Sarah, this means actively working to reclaim her sense of self-worth and shifting her focus from Tara's assessments back to her objective measures of success. Engaging in practices such as positive self-affirmation is crucial. Sarah should take time each day to acknowledge her strengths and accomplishments, reminding herself that her value does not hinge on external validation. By doing so, she can gradually weaken the manipulative hold that Tara has established. Furthermore, maintaining strong connections with supportive colleagues and friends is vital in fortifying emotional resilience. Isolation can amplify the effects of manipulation. Thus, seeking the support of a trusted network becomes essential for victims like Sarah. Regular check-ins with friends or peers who appreciate her abilities can reinforce her self-esteem and provide a fresh perspective on her situation. This external validation serves as a counterweight to the negative influences she endures from Tara, reminding her that she is capable and valued beyond the confines of the manipulative relationship. Recognizing manipulative tactics and understanding how they chip away at mental resilience is pivotal for empowerment. By establishing boundaries, cultivating self-worth, and seeking community support, individuals can fortify their minds against psychological manipulation. This chapter aims to underscore the importance of mental resilience in the face of toxic dynamics, emphasizing that individuals can reclaim their stories and rebuild their confidence. As we transition to the next part of this chapter, we will explore actionable strategies for developing enduring mental resilience. Armed with the knowledge of psychological tactics, readers will be equipped to reinforce their emotional defenses and thrive in their personal and professional lives. Understanding the foundation of mental resilience will enable you to navigate complex dynamics and emerge stronger in the face of adversity. The impact of psychological manipulation on emotions, decision-making, relationships, and self-esteem cannot be overstated, particularly in the context of strengthening one's mind against such influences. Victims of manipulation often experience intense emotional turmoil, which can lead to chronic stress and anxiety. For example, Sarah, as she navigates her toxic relationship with Tara, may find herself oscillating between feelings of inadequacy and desperation for approval. When Tara dismisses Sarah's ideas or offers disparaging comments under the guise of helpful feedback, it chips away at Sarah's emotional well-being, fostering a sense of confusion and prolonged discomfort. This emotional upheaval can make it increasingly challenging for victims to make confident decisions, as their judgment becomes clouded by doubt and fear of failure. When manipulated constantly, individuals like Sarah begin to internalize these negative perspectives, which tarnish their self-image and spiral into a state of self-criticism. Research in psychological studies indicates that emotional manipulation can lead to what is termed learned helplessness, where victims come to believe they are powerless to change their circumstances. A paper published in the Journal of Social Issues outlines that victims of emotional abuse experience significantly lower self-esteem over time as a direct consequence of this manipulation. The more individuals succumb to the negative narratives imposed upon them, the more they amplify their perception of inadequacy. One of the most insidious aspects of manipulation is the way it affects relationships. When Tara surreptitiously undermines Sarah's confidence, it creates a dynamic where Sarah becomes increasingly isolated from other colleagues and friends. This isolation is not only a byproduct of negative manipulation, but often a strategy employed by the manipulator, who may suggest that other people do not understand or appreciate Sarah's talents as much as they do. Victims, believing they have no strong support system, may retreat even further into the manipulative relationship, perceiving it as their sole source of validation. The reasons individuals fall into these traps are multifaceted. For many, the initial attraction of a manipulator stems from the sense of acceptance and affirmation. In Sarah's case, Tara may have first gained her trust by showing enthusiasm for her work and offering to collaborate on projects. This initial kindness can act as a gateway, leading victims to overlook the subtle manipulations that follow. Furthermore, The psychological tendency known as the halo effect suggests that individuals often attribute positive qualities to someone based solely on an initial favorable trait, blinding them to the manipulator's more toxic behaviors. The emotional damage inflicted by manipulative relationships can lead to skewed perceptions of reality, where victims may doubt their own emotions or experiences. For Sarah, this may manifest as confusion regarding her contributions at work, misinterpreting Tara's criticisms as valid assessments rather than manipulative tactics. This cognitive dissonance reinforces the need for the victim to seek acceptance from the very person undermining their self-worth, creating a vicious cycle of dependency. Understanding the effects of psychological manipulation on emotions and self-esteem is vital for those wishing to safeguard themselves against toxic influences. By learning to identify these patterns, individuals can cultivate a mindset of resilience and empower themselves in their interactions. As we look ahead to the next section of this chapter, we will delve into the hidden warning signs of manipulation that often go unnoticed, equipping you with the tools necessary to navigate relationships with clarity and confidence. Recognizing these signs is the first critical step in reclaiming your narrative and dismantling the grip of toxic influences on your life. Manipulators possess an acute ability to identify their targets, often honing in on individuals who exhibit specific vulnerabilities, such as low self-esteem, a desire for approval, or emotional insecurity. They pay close attention to social dynamics and interpersonal behaviors, allowing them to recognize potential victims who are most likely to be swayed by charm or emotional appeal. For instance, in a workplace setting, a manipulative manager might notice a new employee like Sarah, who is eager to impress and highly motivated to excel. By observing her interactions with colleagues and her yearning for validation, the manipulator can tailor their approach to exploit her need for affirmation. In scenarios like these, manipulative individuals often initiate the relationship with excessive praise and attention. Sarah may find herself drawn in by her manager's apparent support, receiving compliments about her contributions and encouragement to share her ideas. However, as the relationship progresses, the dynamic inevitably shifts. The manager gradually begins to inject criticism, often framed as constructive feedback, undermining Sarah's confidence and making her rely increasingly on their validation. This approach creates a psychological trap where Sarah feels obligated to seek approval, leading her to suppress her own thoughts and instincts. The initial allure of support quickly morphs into coercive control, but victims frequently fail to recognize this transition until it is deeply embedded in the fabric of their relationships. Psychological research supports the notion that manipulators expertly utilize emotional cues to identify and exploit their targets. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology highlights that individuals who display subservient or insecure traits are often more susceptible to manipulation because they are less likely to challenge negative perceptions or assert their boundaries. This finding underscores the importance of recognizing not only one's vulnerabilities, but also the manipulator's strategies in preying on them. The subtle shifts that occur during manipulation can often be imperceptible at first. Victims may initially experience feelings of gratitude and enthusiasm, believing they have established a supportive relationship. However, these positive feelings become overshadowed as the manipulator inserts doubt into the victim's mind. For instance, after a successful project, the manager might follow up with a comment such as, "You did well this time, but remember last month's mistake?" This form of backhanded praise operates under the guise of feedback, but effectively instills a sense of inadequacy that the victim internalizes. Sarah may increasingly perceive herself as incompetent, further entrenching her in the manipulator's web of control. Another common tactic employed by manipulators is the use of emotional blackmail, where they create scenarios that exploit the victim's fears or insecurities. A case study involving Mark, who works under a similarly toxic manager, illustrates this vividly. Whenever Mark hesitated to comply with unreasonable demands, the manager would threaten him with vague implications about his job security or raise the specter of negative performance reviews. The emotional turmoil from such threats can paralyze victims, causing them to capitulate to coercive control rather than standing firm for their rights and needs. Understanding how manipulators identify and exploit their targets is crucial for self-defense. By recognizing the manipulator's strategies and the psychological shifts that accompany such interactions, individuals like Sarah and Mark will be better equipped to safeguard their emotional and mental well-being. Awareness is your first line of defense, preparing you to resist these harmful dynamics. As we advance to the next part of this chapter, we will closely examine the escalation of control techniques utilized by manipulators, illuminating how victims gradually become entrapped in cycles of dependency that are challenging to escape. Gaining insight into this incremental process is vital for reclaiming your power and fostering healthier relationships. Breaking free from the grasp of dark psychological tactics requires a proactive and strategic approach to reclaim your emotional autonomy. A fundamental counterstrategy is the implementation of assertive communication, which empowers individuals to express their thoughts and feelings confidently while setting clear boundaries. By mastering this skill, you can create a protective shield against manipulative behaviors that seek to invade your personal space and undermine your self-esteem. The cornerstone of assertive communication is clarity. Begin by identifying specific behaviors or comments that make you uncomfortable or that you find unacceptable. For instance, if a colleague consistently undermines your contributions during meetings, practice articulating your feelings about this behavior in a calm yet firm manner. You might say, "I feel that my ideas are being overlooked, and I would appreciate a more supportive approach during our discussions." This approach not only asserts your feelings, but also invites constructive dialogue, paving the way for healthier interactions. Additionally, it is crucial to trust your instincts. Your intuition often acts as a vital compass, guiding you in recognizing when something feels off. Manipulators thrive in environments of ambiguity and uncertainty, often exploiting those moments to gain control. When you sense discomfort during an interaction, perhaps feeling belittled or confused, take a pause to assess the situation. Are these feelings stemming from a legitimate concern about a relationship, or are they a reaction to manipulative tactics? Regaining clarity during such moments allows you to make informed decisions rather than reacting impulsively. To enhance your ability to trust your instincts, engage in regular self-reflection. Consider keeping a journal to track your emotions and interactions. Documenting instances where you felt manipulated or uncomfortable can help illuminate patterns in your relationships. Over time, this practice can reveal the true nature of your encounters, empowering you to act with intention and purpose. When you regularly check in with yourself, you develop a clearer understanding of your emotional landscape, which is crucial for distinguishing between genuine connections and toxic influences. In addition to assertive communication and self-reflection, establishing a support network is equally important. Surrounding yourself with individuals who uplift and validate your experiences provides a buffer against manipulative tactics. These trusted allies can offer perspectives that remind you of your worth and reinforce your boundaries. Sharing experiences within this network can lead to mutual encouragement and strength, further empowering you to break free from the control of manipulators. As this chapter concludes, remember that the journey toward liberation from psychological manipulation begins with understanding and recognizing these tactics. By honing your assertive communication skills, trusting your instincts, and reinforcing your support system, you fortify your defenses against toxic influences. The knowledge you gain equips you with the tools necessary to thrive in an often chaotic world filled with emotional uncertainty. In the next chapter, we will delve into the escalation of control, exploring how manipulators deepen their influence over victims and entrap them in cycles of dependency. Understanding this process is critical for preserving your autonomy and emotional health. To continue this journey together, consider subscribing to Stealth Psychology, engaging with the content by liking this video, and sharing your personal insights in the comments. Your participation fosters community awareness and growth. Once you grasp these tactics and the mechanisms of control, you will never be manipulated in the same way again. Your path to empowerment and emotional freedom is just beginning. Chapter 7. Thriving Beyond Manipulation, Reclaiming Your Power. Consider a situation where Tom, a passionate and talented marketer, is working on a crucial project that could define his career. Among his colleagues is Rachel, who presents herself as a supportive teammate. Initially, Rachel praises Tom's creativity and insights, creating an environment where he feels valued. However, as they collaborate, it quickly becomes apparent that Rachel is not genuinely invested in Tom's success, but is instead focused on her own agenda. Her subtle manipulations become evident as she starts taking credit for Tom's ideas, making him question his contributions and abilities. Rachel's ultimate goal is emotional control, seeking to undermine Tom's confidence to bolster her own standing within the company. In scenarios like Tom's, victims often find themselves entrapped in a complex web of manipulation, mistaking initial kindness for genuine support. Rachel's tactics, designed to create confusion and dependency, chip away at Tom's self-esteem and sense of agency, causing him to feel increasingly isolated from his colleagues. The initial warmth that drew Tom to Rachel becomes overshadowed by a pervasive sense of inadequacy and doubt. As the dynamic unfolds, it becomes increasingly difficult for Tom to recognize the depth of his entrapment and the extent to which Rachel is manipulating him. This form of psychological manipulation is often subtle, allowing manipulators to operate under the radar of their victims' awareness. The gradual erosion of confidence often leaves individuals like Tom feeling paralyzed, unable to assert themselves and reclaim the narrative of their own lives. In these situations, the manipulator skillfully exploits the victim's vulnerabilities and insecurities, making it challenging for them to see the toxic patterns at play until it is often too late. The emotional repercussions of manipulation can be deeply damaging, leaving victims with long-lasting scars that affect their future interactions. Research has shown that individuals who have experienced manipulation often report feelings of anxiety and depression, indicating a significant toll on mental health. A study published in the Journal of Emotional Abuse reveals that victims of psychological manipulation frequently struggle to regain their self-esteem and confidence, even after the manipulative relationship has ended. The insights gleaned from such research underscore the importance of recognizing manipulative behaviors early, as they can have far-reaching consequences on a person's overall well-being. Victims often find solace in the facade of friendship or support created by their manipulators, leading them to overlook warning signs. Tom, for instance, might initially dismiss Rachel's tactics as mere competitiveness or the ups and downs of office dynamics. However, the truth remains that manipulators thrive in the vulnerabilities of their targets, preying on emotional needs and desires for approval. The moment Tom enters a space where he feels he must continuously justify his worth or defend his ideas, he sacrifices his individuality in exchange for the dangerous semblance of camaraderie. Understanding the dynamics of manipulation is crucial for regaining power over your life and relationships. By recognizing common manipulation tactics and identifying patterns of behavior in others, you equip yourself with the knowledge needed to break free from toxic relationships. As we transition into the next part of this chapter, we will explore practical strategies to reclaim your power and thrive beyond manipulation, providing you with the tools necessary to foster resilience and confidence while establishing healthier connections. Your journey toward empowerment begins with the commitment to recognize and address these dynamics, guiding you toward a path of self-assertion and positive growth in all areas of your life. The emotional impact of psychological manipulation can be devastating, often leading to significant upheaval in a victim's life. When individuals like Tom fall prey to toxic influences, their emotions fluctuate widely, ranging from anxiety about their performance to a crippling sense of inadequacy. The burden of constant doubt and fear undermines their confidence, making it increasingly difficult for them to trust their instincts or make sound decisions. Research indicates that prolonged exposure to manipulative behavior can lead to conditions such as depression and generalized anxiety, a phenomenon documented in studies published by the American Psychological Association. Victims often grapple with decision-making paralysis. They become so conditioned to seek approval from their manipulator that they may abandon their viewpoints altogether. In Tom's case, every time he hesitates to voice his ideas in meetings due to fear of Rachel's criticism, he spirals deeper into self-doubt. This dynamic not only affects his productivity, but also reinforces the hold that Rachel has over him, creating a vicious cycle that further erodes his self-esteem. Psychological studies highlight that when individuals rely on manipulators for validation, it can cloud their judgment and diminish their confidence, leading to increased compliance and reduced assertiveness. Furthermore, the relationships of those caught in manipulative dynamics can become severely strained. As Tom's dependence on Rachel grows, he may inadvertently distance himself from supportive colleagues and friends who could provide healthier perspectives. His need to appease Rachel may lead him to ignore or dismiss the advice of his peers, who might recognize her behavior for what it truly is. The isolation that accompanies manipulation can exacerbate feelings of inadequacy, solidifying the victim's belief that they are unworthy unless they conform to the manipulator's expectations. People often fall victim to these tactics due to their innate desire for acceptance and belonging. The initial charm exhibited by manipulators can create a false sense of security, making it easy for victims to overlook early warning signs. Tom might have been drawn to Rachel's initial support and encouragement, which provided him with the affirmation he sought at a time when he felt insecure in his new role. This demonstrates a critical psychological principle. The desire for approval can cloud one's judgment, leading individuals to rationalize unhealthy behaviors as simply part of a competitive work environment. Understanding the subtle manipulation inherent in these relationships is crucial for recovery. Victims must learn to identify the tactics employed by manipulators and understand how these behaviors erode their confidence and self-worth. The critical turning point for Tom could lie in the realization that his value does not depend on Rachel's approval. By acknowledging the emotional and psychological scars left by manipulation, he can appreciate the urgency of reclaiming his power and prioritizing his mental well-being. As we transition to the next part of this chapter, we will delve into the hidden warning signs that often go undetected in manipulative relationships. Recognizing these signs early is vital for safeguarding oneself against emotional exploitation and embracing healthier dynamics. With knowledge comes empowerment, and this is a significant step towards not just surviving but thriving beyond manipulation. Your ability to detect these warning signs will illuminate the path to a more fulfilling and authentic life, allowing you to establish connections that are supportive, respectful, and affirming. Manipulators are adept at identifying their targets, often honing in on individuals who exhibit specific vulnerabilities, such as low self-esteem, a strong desire for validation, or emotional fragility. They are skilled observers, often picking apart social dynamics within groups to discern who might be the most susceptible to manipulation. For instance, consider the scenario of Julia, a new student at a university. Eager to make friends but slightly insecure about fitting in, she quickly catches the attention of a charismatic peer named Ava. Recognizing Julia's need for connection, Ava begins to shower her with compliments and invitations, creating a bond that feels genuine. However, once this connection is formed, the dynamics shift. Ava's true motives become apparent as she gradually begins to control their interactions. In social settings, she subtly undermines Julia's ideas by substituting their opinions or controlling the narrative of their conversations. The initial warmth Julia experienced becomes tainted as Ava resorts to psychological manipulation to gain power. This example illustrates how manipulators recognize and exploit the emotional vulnerabilities of their victims, making it challenging for them to discern the shift from supportive friendship to controlling partnership. The subtle psychological shifts that occur during this manipulation can be profound. Initially, Julia feels a sense of belonging and validation, reinforcing her initial trust in Ava. However, as the relationship progresses and Ava's criticisms become more pronounced, Julia experiences confusion, self-doubt, and emotional instability. She may start questioning her thoughts and contributions, believing they are inferior compared to Ava's. This is a common tactic. Manipulators often use praise followed by criticism to create an unbalanced emotional dependency, leaving victims feeling uncertain and reliant on their approval for self-worth. This dependence often fosters a cycle of emotional turmoil. When Julia attempts to stand up for herself, she is met with dismissive comments from Ava like, "You're being too sensitive, I'm just trying to help you improve." Such remarks serve to further erode Julia's confidence and reinforce Ava's authority over her decisions and feelings. Psychological research has demonstrated that such interactions can lead to cognitive dissonance, where the victim begins to internalize the manipulator's views, leading to skewed self-perceptions and increased reliance on the manipulator for validation. The reasons people fall for these tactics are complex and deeply rooted in psychological needs. The desire for belonging and approval can blind individuals to the red flags present in manipulative relationships. Julia, for instance, is initially drawn to Ava's charm and perceived caring nature, failing to recognize the manipulative undertones of the friendship. This dynamic is further supported by the halo effect, where individuals attribute positive qualities to someone based on one or two favorable characteristics, thereby overlooking toxic behaviors. Understanding how manipulators identify and exploit their targets is critical for self-defense. By becoming aware of these patterns and recognizing the signs of psychological manipulation, individuals can reclaim their agency and emotional wellness. This awareness is essential for breaking free from the grips of manipulation and fostering resilient self-esteem and healthier relationships. As we prepare to transition into the next part of this chapter, we will explore the escalation of control utilized by manipulators, detailing how they tighten their grip on victims and hinder their ability to break free. Recognizing the incremental tactics of manipulation is key to developing resistance and empowerment, allowing individuals to safeguard their well-being and thrive beyond manipulative influences. Understanding these dynamics not only equips individuals with the knowledge needed to defend themselves, but also lays the groundwork for more meaningful connections based on respect and authenticity. To break free from the influence of dark psychological tactics, a powerful counter-strategy is the practice of self-empowerment through assertiveness training. Assertiveness allows individuals to effectively communicate their feelings and needs while standing firm in their self-worth, creating a protective barrier against manipulation. This strategy not only builds confidence, but also reinforces boundaries, making it difficult for manipulators to exploit weaknesses. Begin by recognizing your own worth and understanding that you have the right to express your emotions and opinions without fear of backlash. Engage in affirmation exercises to reinforce this belief. For instance, create a personal mantra that reflects your values and capabilities, such as, "My thoughts and feelings are valid, and I deserve respect." Repeating such affirmations daily helps bolster your self-esteem and prepares you to confront manipulative behaviors with confidence. When navigating interactions that feel strained or uncomfortable, it's essential to trust your instincts. Pay attention to your emotional cues. If you feel anxious, unheard, or belittled, take a moment to pause and reflect on why those feelings are arising. Manipulators thrive in environments of uncertainty, where their targets doubt their perceptions and feel insecure. By regaining clarity in these situations, you empower yourself to make informed decisions regarding your relationships. Practicing assertive communication means articulating your needs clearly and confidently. For instance, if a colleague like Rachel continues to undermine your contributions, approach the situation with clarity. You might say, "I appreciate your input, but I believe my ideas also deserve consideration." This directness challenges the manipulative behavior and reestablishes your right to express yourself. It's crucial to remain calm and resolute, even if faced with resistance. This poise often disarms manipulators and signifies that you will no longer tolerate disrespect. Another practical strategy involves establishing and enforcing personal boundaries. Identify non-negotiables in your relationships and communicate them proactively. For example, if you find that discussions with a manipulative individual repeatedly lead to feelings of self-doubt, assert a boundary that specifies the topics you're willing to engage in. If they breach these boundaries, remind them of your stance firmly and compassionately. Consistently maintaining boundaries empowers you to protect your emotional space and cultivate healthier interactions. Furthermore, seek to surround yourself with supportive networks. Engaging with individuals who uplift your self-esteem and validate your experiences helps counterbalance manipulative influences. This community provides not only emotional support, but also alternative perspectives that can clarify confusing manipulative dynamics. Confiding in trusted friends can reinforce your self-worth and remind you of your ability to stand strong against toxic influences. As you embrace these strategies, recognize the transformative power of acknowledging your experiences and asserting your needs. Liberation from manipulation begins with understanding and deploying these tactics to regain control over your narrative. The journey toward emotional empowerment is challenging, yet rewarding, ensuring that you will emerge from the experience with a renewed sense of self. Once you comprehend these tactics and their impacts, you will never be controlled in the same way again. Your path to independence and resilience is illuminated by knowledge and practice, serving as your shield against the manipulative forces that seek to undermine your strength. Stand firm in your abilities, trust your instincts, and remember that liberation is within your grasp. As we reach the conclusion of our journey through toxic tactics, recognizing Machiavellian influence around you, we have explored the intricate dynamics of psychological manipulation and its profound effects on emotions, relationships, and self-esteem. From understanding how manipulators identify their targets to recognizing the subtle shifts that occur during these toxic interactions, the knowledge you've gained equips you to reclaim your power and foster healthier connections in your life. We've emphasized the importance of establishing boundaries, trusting your instincts, and developing mental resilience as vital strategies to break free from manipulative influences. Thank you for taking the time to engage with this material and embark on a path of empowerment. Your commitment to understanding these tactics is crucial, not only for your personal growth, but also for building awareness in your community. If you found this content valuable, we encourage you to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more insights on navigating complex social dynamics and fostering emotional well-being. Together, let's continue to cultivate an informed and resilient community capable of recognizing and resisting manipulation.